won a game in the month of May just yet, but Luis Ortiz and Chris Owings are now up. How are they going to impact this team in this series against the Rockies, where the Pittsburgh Pirates look to end their 7-game skid? All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates, brought to you by eBay Motors.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. We are live here pregame, just ahead of the 3-game series against the Colorado Rockies, a team that the Pittsburgh Pirates have proven they can more than beat, a team that we saw them sweep in Denver, but more on that later. The bigger news coming out of Pittsburgh today was the call-up of Chris Owings. Chris Owings, of course, gets called up. Mark Mathias goes down, and we all know why. The defensive issues that we have seen in this middle infield are atrocious. It's a big reason as to why the Pirates are on this 7-game skid. It's not the only reason. There's plenty of reasons why the Pittsburgh Pirates are on this losing streak right now, but on one hand, the Pirates have a guy in Chris Owings who is a career .963 fielding percentage guy. Not too bad over the whole course of your career. And if you look at his minor league stats, he actually hits the ball pretty well across his career, batting in the 290s. Now, in the major league level, he's batting in the 240s or just below the 240s. So we'll see if Chris Owings can bring some offensive input. He is in the game tonight in the lineup that we saw. And Mark Mathias was a guy that the Pirates were really fine with. They went out and got him off of waivers, and he just wasn't really getting it done defensively at all. Now, of course, Rodolfo Castro has had his issues as well. Ji-Hwan Bae has had his defensive issues. There's a lot of issues that have been going on in this middle infield that once O'Neal Cruz got hurt, we didn't really think that it was going to be this big of an issue, but Rodolfo Castro does really struggle at the shortstop position to no fault of his own. It's just not a position that he's comfortable playing. It's not a position that he's used to playing, and it's a position that he really just has to get used to and ultimately won't have to get used to as long as O'Neal Cruz is healthy. He's just been stuck in that role alongside Tucupita Marcano and even Ji-Hwan Bae or Mark Mathias at times, but it's a role that Rodolfo Castro doesn't have to be in. Now, second base, a little bit more of his speed. We've seen him have issues over at second base so far throughout this skid as well. But when you really boil it down to what the Pirates are trying to do here with Chris Owings, he's their best option that they have defensively at AAA right now. Now, you look at Liover Peguero, you look at Nick Gonzalez. I think those guys are profiling more as second basemen. Do you want to play them at shortstop? That's ultimately up to what the Pittsburgh Pirates want to do as a future plan. Ultimately, as well, if he was healthy right now, I think this would have been the perfect time to bring up Jared Triolo, who's a guy who has a glove very almost comparable to Ke'Bryan Hayes, even though Ke'Bryan Hayes is one of the best defensive third basemen in all of baseball. But Chris Owings definitely has that ability to play defense at any infield position, including the middle infield. So the Chris Owings call-up, I don't know what to really expect here. I don't know if it's going to be a long-term thing. I don't know if it's going to be a short-term thing, but it's ultimately trying to fix something that the Pirates desperately need fixed right now, which is the defense that we've seen in this middle infield. And ultimately, the defense all around needs some work. And, it gets to the point where they saw enough from Mark Mathias having defensive issues that they sent him back down to AAA. And ultimately, a lot of us would have liked to see some other names be called up, but Chris Owings is a guy who has experience playing the shortstop position. He's played over 500 games at the shortstop position in his baseball career. He's played second base too, so on specific days, he can go to second base also. You never really know. Maybe Chris Owings shores up the middle infield defense. Maybe it helps the Pirates get a win tonight. Maybe he even throws a hit in there or two. Who really knows? Harper Man is here, as always, for these live editions of Locked On Pirates. He says, Pirates, fun fact, our actual worst season was 1952 with a 52-110 record. Interesting that they won 52 games in 52. He also says, hopefully we could sweep Colorado this week. We probably could because we're not at Coors Field. Yeah, I mean, but you saw what we did to them at Coors Field, and it was something that the Pirates, that was a game where it was like, okay, the Pirates are taking care of a team they need to be taken care of. And the Rockies were also playing much worse baseball than they are right now. They're coming off of a pretty good stretch of games, actually. And last thoughts on Chris Owings, though. Chris Owings, again, you're looking at a guy that just, he's not going to flash anything. He's not flashy. He's not a guy that's going to be on MLB.com for, oh, he's up here. The guy's 31 years old. He's a veteran middle infielder that is here to shore up the middle infield for this Pittsburgh Pirates team that really, really needs it right now with everything going on. And it's just overemphasizing the O'Neal Cruz entry. O'Neal Cruz, not the greatest defensively either, but he's definitely more capable of it than what we've seen from this Pirates team over the last week. And then, of course, in the more exciting call-up here, he is on the taxi squad today, but he's expected to go tomorrow. As you'll see in the description for this show, and if you're here right now, I'll only get into this briefly because I'm going to talk about it a lot more on tomorrow's episode, which will be fresh on your feeds in the morning on Tuesday. But Luis Ortiz is here. We kind of all expected this. Seeing as how the Pirates handled him on Friday, I think they only let him go like 2 or 3 innings on Friday. And of course, that was fresh off of the Vince Velasquez injury that we saw in Thursday's game against the Tampa Bay Rays. So we knew that no matter if it was short-term or long-term, that the Pirates were going to have to make a decision here on who was going to pitch in tomorrow's game. And they decide with Luis Ortiz, who we saw a little bit of last year. He's up there in the max pitch velocities at the minor league level right now. He's a guy that you really have to look at as a future piece of this rotation. Skyrocketed through the system last year in 2022. All eyes are on him now with Michael Burrows being on the shelf. JT Brubaker, of course, being on the shelf also opens the door a little bit better for Luis Ortiz to be in this position, period. So again, just mentioning that briefly, but we'll get into it a lot more tomorrow on tomorrow's show, seeing as he is probably starting tomorrow for the Pittsburgh Pirates against the Rockies in the second game of the series. But we'll talk about how the Pirates can end their losing streak tonight against Colorado, a team that, of course, they swept in Colorado not too long ago. But before we do that, Harperman also says, is Brian Reynolds doing good defensively? I think he's done fine in left field. I mean, we saw him almost win a Gold Glove as a center fielder. I think he's done just perfectly fine in left field. He's making good decisions. He's held some of these hard-hit balls to left field that we've seen. Instead of them being doubles, they've been singles, or instead of them being triples, they've been doubles. So Brian Reynolds, he's been doing fine. Jack Sawinski on the same coin. He's been doing good in center field as well. But before we get further into your guys' concerns and questions and how the Pirates can end their losing streak tonight, today's episode, of course, is brought to you by the wonderful people at eBay Motors. You can build your vision part by part at ebaymotors.com. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors with eBay Guaranteed Fit. You can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Harperman says, I can't wait till I have the money to actually watch the Pirates live. I am actually thinking about making a trip to Pittsburgh, possibly in June, for a series. To highlight your week, of course, you saw me and Gary were not on together this Monday. I was under the weather yesterday, so I was not able to record on Sundays as we usually do. He will be back next week, of course. I'm coming to you guys live right now. seeing as I'm feeling much better and I worked this morning, just ahead of this Pirates-Rockies game. And then, of course, tomorrow's show will preview Game 2 and talk a lot more about the Luis Ortiz call-up and what we expect from Luis Ortiz, what he's been doing in the minor leagues that have got him to this point, and how he can win against Colorado tomorrow. On Wednesday, we will be looking at Game 3. Thursday, of course, is the off day, so Craig and I will be talking about some prospect stuff as well as taking a look at the weekend series. And then on Friday, we'll look at the weekend series a little bit more in depth. But you look at what the Pirates have to do tonight, folks, and this Pirates team has looked very bad. Very, very bad for the last week. But they're still 5 games over 500 right now, guys. 5 games over 500 is very nice to see, right? Now, you look at the lineup that we get tonight. It's an interesting lineup. You have Hayes and Reynolds and McCutchen as your top 3. Santana at the cleanup spot. Connor Joe, Rodolfo Castro, Jack Sawinski, Chris Owings, Austin Hedges, of course, with Mitch Keller on the hill here. I'm expecting the Pirates offense, especially here, against a Rockies team that their pitching has not been the greatest in the world. We saw that before. Of course, they get Kyle Freeland tonight, who's a lefty, sitting at a 3.76 ERA. Keller sitting at a 3.32. Also, to be fair, we have won against 2 teams that have made the playoffs in the past 3 years, one of which made the World Series. That is very true, yes. The Rockies are 14-21. As I mentioned, though, of course, they are playing much better baseball than the last time that we saw them. And Kyle Freeland is arguably their best pitcher, probably their best pitcher that they have in their rotation. I think the biggest thing that we need to see from the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight, and I think mostly everybody will agree with this take for the most part, is the last couple of games, especially against Toronto, we've seen a trend from this team where before we can even blink, the Pirates in this Blue Jays series were down through a half inning almost every game in that series. They might have been down before the end of the first half of the first inning in every game. And then the offense is not doing what we were seeing before this losing streak, where they were just scoring runs early and letting their starting pitchers settle into the game a little bit more, because that's also what we've seen from this Pirates team is the starting pitching has not been on the same level as it was in the month of April, but they have those rough first couple innings, and then they start to settle in. They start to figure things out, but it is really tough to do that when your offense is also not really picking you up at all in terms of how this team was doing that in April. So what I'm expecting tonight from this Pirates team, go out there, Mitch Keller, and do what you do best. You're the stopper of this rotation. You are the guy in the rotation that is put there to end these losing streaks. You're supposed to go out there and pitch 5 or 6, even maybe 7 innings of good baseball. That's what I fully expect Mitch Keller to do tonight. The Rockies lineup is definitely a lot less scary than the Rays lineup or the Jays lineup. I want Mitch to go out there and pound the zone. I want him to use his best stuff. I want him to get out of the first inning without giving up a run. Please, for the love of God, get out of the first inning without giving up a run. And from the offensive point, Kyle Freeland has been pitching well for the most part to start the year, but get on him early. Make him at least sweat in the first inning or two. Put runners in scoring position. And when you get runners in scoring position, for the love of God, score runners in scoring position. That has been the thing that has infuriated me the most here, is they get runners in scoring position, and you saw that very much so in that Tampa Bay Rays series where Connor Joe had doubles that whole series, but the Pirates could never score. And they scored 9 runs over the course of this losing streak. It's been bad. It has been very bad just all around. Yesterday's game, by the way, I'll go back and look at it, 10-1, real quick. That scoreline is not what that game was at all. Chase DeYoung basically had his designated for assignment outing in that game. So don't look at the scoreline there too much, but they have not played good baseball the past week, largely in part to the offense hitting at the tune of 135 or 174. It's some terrible number. And the starting pitching just hasn't been what it was in April because they've been having to play from behind. They've been getting hit early and often, and the offense has not been picking them back up. A guarantee of the season I can make we're sweeping Oakland? Hey, I don't know, Harperman. I don't ever call those out because I'm the one who says that they're going to sweep the Athletics and then the Athletics take 2 or 3, I'm going to be to blame. So just so everybody knows, he said that. He made that a guarantee. I did not. David says, I'm so at the team. I'll go today, but if they lose, my heart will break. Well, I'm expecting them to bounce back here against a team that they've proven they can beat before. I think that's going to be one of the bigger things here is that they've already played this Rockies team. They've went to Colorado and manhandled this team. Now, I hope they don't go into tonight's game expecting to do that again, but I do think that it's an added boost for them that they know that they can beat this team and not only beat this team, but manhandle them. I want to see Hedges take a seat and let DeLay get more playing time. It seems like a no-brainer right now. When will this happen? We saw DeLay again yesterday start, and he did very well. He's hitting the baseball well. I think if we see this week, like Monday through Sunday, if we see another week where Austin Hedges is playing subpar for the most part. Now, obviously, Jason DeLay and Austin Hedges are actually top 5 right now in pitch framing from catchers, which is very nice to see. But Jason DeLay is just making contact with the baseball. He really is. He's a guy that's going up there, and even if the contact is not that great at all, he's making very good contact. He is getting on base. He is adding some offensive power to that back end of the lineup that Austin Hedges just isn't adding and never has added. Again, I said this about Austin Hedges when the Pirates picked him up. This was no surprise that he was going to be this bad offensively. The past week, though, we have seen some defensive issues. I don't really know what the Pirates' plan is here if Hedges does continue to struggle defensively a little bit. He has been getting stolen on like everybody else, but to a measure that was not happening to the Pirates in April. And it's concerning if he can't turn it around. But I also think that that escalates Jason DeLay into getting more playing time. And ultimately, if Hedges is struggling, maybe even Endy comes up here. Who knows? Endy is, of course, trying to still get healthy from his injury that he had. But when Endy's ready, if Hedges is still playing subpar defensively, I mean, I don't know what he's adding at that point because he's not giving you anything offensively. So if he's not playing well defensively either, then what is he offering you realistically? That's where I think I look at it the most. Trade Hedges for NPB. Yeah, I don't know. Hedges, again, he's done a lot for what we've seen from this pitching staff this year. He's done a lot in terms of how this pitching staff has grown this year and what the success we saw in April was. But there are some concerns that the Pirates might just have to ultimately pass on at some point in favor of Jason DeLay or Endy Rodriguez. Do I ever think Drew Maggi will come back up? No. I don't think Maggi comes back up. I think that was just it was a matter of they needed a 26 guy on the roster. He was a 26 guy on the roster, which has also infuriated me with Miguel Andujar, who's also the 26 guy on the roster and has started like 5 out of the last 7 games. I just don't see him coming back up because by then you're talking about Nick Gonzalez, Leo Piguero, Endy Rodriguez, who can play the middle infield at second base. O'Neal Cruz will be healthy by then if it ever arises. Now, if there's injuries to the middle infield, which is already starting to look like it's having issues depth-wise, then I think you consider it, but I don't think Maggi's going to come back up anytime soon. To move farther with how the Pirates can end this losing streak too, show some life, please. I also am happy that Andrew McCutchen's back in the lineup today too. I think that's going to be very helpful for the team overall. I think that's going to be helpful for team morale. I think it's something that the Pirates are going to use to their advantage. How do you guys, what do you guys think is going to happen tonight? I genuinely want to know where your guys' heads are and how the Pirates are going to attack this and how things are going to go for them tonight. Because I ultimately think the losing streak ends tonight. I think they're going to win tonight. I think this is the perfect game for them to do it. You get Mitch Keller versus Kyle Freeland. Freeland, again, been one of the better pitchers for the Rockies, but you're getting your best pitcher out there in the midst of a 7-game losing streak, and you're playing a team that you outscored 33 to 7 or something like that, some crazy number when you played them in Colorado. And ultimately, I think a change of pace in the middle infield should be good. I hope Chris Owings, and I expect Chris Owings to do well defensively at the shortstop position. I think Castro, of course, is much more comfortable at second base. I think Hayes, of course, is going to do his thing. And I think the top half of the lineup is going to be very good as well, as you guys heard me mention it earlier. I think Reynolds, Hayes, and McCutchen have big days to pick up this team. I think Connor Joe is going to have a pretty decent night as well. He had a good time the last series against Colorado. Harperman says we will raise the Jolly Roger. There's no doubt about it. Let's hope so. I truly hope so. But again, I think this is the perfect time to end this one, folks. I want to keep it short for you. Luis Ortiz is up. We'll see him tomorrow. More on him tomorrow. Chris Owings is starting at shortstop tonight to try to fix the middle infield issues that we've seen from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Pirates are looking to end their 7-game losing streak against Colorado Rockies. It'll be Kyle Freeland versus Mitch Keller tonight. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Where is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day? Guys, I will see you tomorrow morning, and I'll see you on the flip side.